In Chapter 9, we are introduced to Lewis's guide throughout the rest of The Great Divorce, a man named George MacDonald. And the chapter is long enough that I've devoted the next 3 segments to talking about this chapter. It's central in many ways to the whole book. First, I think we should just talk a little bit about George MacDonald, who he is and what kind of influence he exerted on Lewis such that he would occupy this central place in this book. George MacDonald was born in 1824 and died in 1905. He was Scottish. He started as a clergyman and later became a novelist, author of many children's stories. Probably the one that you would still find in the bookstores, The Princess and the Goblin, which G.K. Chesterton, in fact, was a big fan of. He had a very short-lived career as a preacher. Most of his time he spent teaching English literature, writing, giving lecture tours. He lived in poverty most of his life and also suffered from poor health. In the 1870s, he got an invitation to tour and lecture in the United States, and very well received by huge audiences, by writers like Waldo Emerson, by G.K. Chesterton, Longfellow, Walt Whitman. He formed a friendship with Mark Twain and exerted some degree of influence on him. George MacDonald inspired a number of authors, William W.H. Auden, J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, Evelyn Nisbet, and Madeleine L'Engle. Before there was Lord of the Rings or before there was Chronicles of Narnia, the great series of fantasy books out there was really George MacDonald. Lewis wrote in a preface to an anthology of George MacDonald that he put together himself that he felt a great debt of justice to MacDonald, that he regarded him always as a master, and he never concealed that he's never written a book. Lewis said he'd never written a book where he didn't quote from him. It seemed to him that a lot of people that appreciated his books, that is Lewis's books, never had an appreciation of MacDonald. And so in putting together that anthology, he was trying to lead people to see all these wonderful insights that he had gotten out of from years and years of writing. George MacDonald exerted two basic influences on Lewis. The first was imaginative, and the second was theological. Let's look at that first one. When Lewis was 16 years old, he discovered MacDonald's book, Fantastes. This is an imaginative adventure story where a young man on his 21st birthday is catapulted into this fairy world and has this long adventure. Strange allegorical things happen, as well as a kind of a literal progress, danger, and eventually return to his own world. Lewis talks about the story converting and baptizing his imagination. By the time he was 16, he was no longer a believer. He had given up Christian faith. And yet, Fantastes, MacDonald's work, had the effect of, if you like, Christianizing his imagination, even though his intellect wasn't coming along for the ride. He talks about the influence of this book as somehow opening up the real world around him. As he puts it in his autobiographical words by Joy, I saw the bright shadow come out of the book into the real world and rest in there, transformed all the common things, and yet it sounds changed. Or accurately, I saw the common things drawn into the bright shadow. In other words, this was a book that allowed him to have now a kind of enchanted view of the real world. That somehow there was something wonderful about the real universe in which he lived. If somebody had told him older that this thing that he discovered was goodness, that would have surprised him. But now he realized that all the moralism, the things that I had thought about right and wrong, all these things that I had taught in a way which can find right and wrong in being law and duty. Somehow in MacDonald they were made wonderful, magical. The way he puts it is, it lets us feel on our face the sweet air blowing in the land of righteousness. In other words, it was something about God's work that allowed him to see the beauty of the faith, the beauty, in fact, of living for godly things. Although in encountering that as a 16-year-old, he didn't quite realize that what was happening. Lewis commends what he calls mythopoeia ability that MacDonald had. In other words, they could create something that was imaginatively compelling. His writing was something that at times not even second rate. Lewis did not respect MacDonald as a writer, but the ideas, the sort of imaginative world into which he would put you. He could do that better than anybody else. Think about something that comes from ancient history, from the Greeks, Romans, and yet MacDonald had this imaginative power. He could craft otherworldly things and make those ideas so compelling that they stuck with you, even when the delivery wasn't so great. He said of MacDonald that it came to making him a myth. This was the greatest genius of his kind I know. Of course, we know these sort of thing from Lewis, J.R. and Narnia. But very inspiration for that sort of creativity came from George MacDonald. Okay. Second influence. If you look at anthology was together, most of the works they drew what are called the unspoken sermons. These are sermons by works that were written by George MacDonald, but they were never delivered. They were never given in sermon in church. And Lewis said quite openly, my debt to this book is nearly great as man over another. He considered that this was a book that was indispensable in terms of helping people accept the Christian faith. That these 3 volumes of these uncertain sermons, as he puts it, have this close to the spirit of Christ himself. They have this wonderful Christ-like unity of tenderness, severity, and he says nowhere else outside the New Testament have I found terror and comfort so intertwined. In other words, these two essential aspects of what he understands Christ's teaching to be, that there is this fearfulness that we should have in light of sin, God's law, but also this wonderful comfort that comes from Christ's home God's love and mercy. These are perfectly entwined, perfectly together in MacDonald's writing. So it is fitting that here's the middle of the Great Divorce that MacDonald ends up being his theological guide and teacher. Just as Dante first led through Inferno, Purgatory by Virgil, and then by Beatrice in Paradiso, then Lewis himself has a guide who explains to him what's happening, what he's seeing, and what his significance is. That's of course what Virgil and Beatrice do within the comedy. Now MacDonald occupies that same role here. Well, in the next section, we'll look at MacDonald's opening discussion of what Lewis is seeing and what it means.